How are we going? Got a couple of people online already, so welcome to those of you who are here early. Obviously, we'll wait a bit until people make their way. Obviously, we kick off at 6, but you know, feel free if you've got any questions. Yeah, feel free to introduce yourself and ask away while we're waiting.
Hi, it's Amanda Armistead.
Hey Amanda, how you going?
Good, how you going?
Too bad.
Good.
Whereabouts are you dialing in from?
I'm dialing in from Brisbane.
Yeah, cool. Got a couple of people. Got, Christy.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, how you going?
Good.
Good. I think I'm going to run out of batteries very shortly, so if you just excuse me, I'm just going to find a charger.
Yeah, cool. No worries.
Okay.
We got Anne, Adrian, Tim. So for those of you who have been talking to some of the QT staff, Tim Burton, you may have come across. He's an English bloke. If you haven't seen him, you'll have heard him. So he is online. So he'll be joining us from his looks like his couch. Yeah, there. So Tim Burton. Obviously, some of you would have talked to Tim already.
Yeah.
Information about the program.
Early.
Sorry, say again?
Anne and I logged on early. Here he is.
There he is. Hello, Mr. Burton. How are you going?
I'm well. How are you?
Not too bad. So we're just you know, basically kicking around while we're waiting for 6 p.m. to kick off. I might bring the camera in a bit. When I'm sort of ranting and raving on a whiteboard, I'll use this sort of setting. It'll be better. Yeah, that one's a bit better. So throughout the session, I'll flick between this screen where you can see me in one of our classrooms, but occasionally I'll start to share the screen to give you an insight. So it's a couple of slides I've got for people. If anyone would like a copy of the slides afterwards, just let us know and we'll shoot them out as part of our our post catch up. So I'll do a little video once I finish here, just to give you a bit of a summary. And we'll probably add these into the, so that you should get an email tomorrow morning. Just thank you for attending, and then basically those slides will be attached to it. Basically, if you want, nothing super crazy on them, but it does give a snapshot of the program, stuff you might want to refer to later on, etc., etc. So yeah, we've got a couple of people coming on now. So yeah. So have you guys been thinking about an MBA for a while?
Well, I hadn't even thought about it until it was suggested that I pursue this course for the betterment, I guess, of myself, personal development. And now I'm really keen to learn all about it.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, so this evening is predominantly about the program and I guess what's involved, how it's designed, how it's structured, how it's I guess delivered. The next couple of weeks will be a bit more insight into we'll do a bit of a demo run, if you like, on some of the theory and some of the models that we use. And I'll give you an insight, I guess, into the way in which we kind of teach, especially in a webinar scenario. But yeah, tonight will predominantly for you, Anne, especially about kind of how the program runs and what's involved and what you want to get out of it. So was it your employer that suggested this might be something that you'd be keen on, or?
No, it was some really, really good friends that obviously had heard about the program and suggested that I have a look at it.
Yeah, cool. I mean, certainly in the context of our, obviously we have, and in QT we have effectively 3 different programs, 4 different delivery modes. So we have the MBA, the Executive MBA, and now our online MBA. And in almost all instances, about 20% of our people coming to the program do come through an alumni referral. Obviously, it's a great way for us to get people in the program, because people who refer other people sort of really already know that they're able to, I guess, kind of get something out of the program. They understand, I guess, the requirements that are needed to participate in the program and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's not surprising that probably people have heard about it and are recommending it to you, which is awesome.
Yes.
Cool. I'll wait a couple more minutes. We're bang on 6, but I'll just wait a little bit more. We've got 12 people online so far. We were anticipating a few more other than 12, so we'll just hold off for a couple of seconds. A lot of people not wanting to show their face. There could be a battery issue though, and sometimes it's connection issues. So sometimes you have to kind of play those things out. So yeah. So we do find in the program, especially one of the things we'll talk about this evening is our optional weekend intensives, where if you like, at the start of every unit that you do, you can come in for 2 days and hang out with everyone. And we find that more and more we see people's faces online after we've seen them connect face to face. It's interesting to see that play out. But welcome to everyone that we can't see. Feel free to ask questions. So Tim is, I think, working the chat line this evening. So he's the co-pilot. So we've got some, hopefully Tim's on board with keeping queries on the chat. So what Tim will do is if there's a question that's asked and he thinks it's worthwhile, everyone, kind of hearing the response, he'll let me know. So apologise if there's any interruption there when Tim basically shouts at me as per normal and says, "Oi, you need to answer this question or this particular issue." So yeah, and again, similarly, I think these sessions work best when people get in there and ask questions. So feel free at any time just to kind of give a bit of a shout out, interrupt me. That's no drama at all, and say, "Can you give me more information about X?" Or "I don't quite understand that." That's definitely the way it works best, if you know what I mean. So cool. Right, let me play around with some stuff. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So for those of you unfamiliar with Zoom, Zoom is our primary, is our major mode by which we engage with people virtually. So when we do our webinars and that sort of thing, we use Zoom. It's a really effective package to help people connect. It's pretty simple, it's pretty stable, and it tends to do the job pretty well. So in terms of what we're going to cover this evening, so welcome to those people who've just come online. I suspect we'll have a couple more drop in along the way. Again, for those, I'll keep just sort of reminding people throughout the session that they're more than welcome to stick their hand up or ask a question. But essentially, I do want to go through a little bit about what MBA is in general, and then obviously more specifically talk about, what Tim and I really feel are the benefits and the strong attributes of the QET online MBA before I move into the specifics. So I shall not be offended if I describe what an MBA is, and in particular what the QET online MBA is, and you think, "Ooh, that's not actually what I want. I want like a master's in finance or something." Cool, I get it. That's the whole point of these sort of sessions, is to really give you an insight into what the program's all about, how it might benefit you, so you can make a good decision and an informed decision. Because we both know that it's a big investment. It's a big investment of time. Indeed, it's a big investment in terms of money. But we obviously would argue, and we've seen, Tim and I have been involved running the program for the last 5 or 6 years now. We've seen, people get some really good benefits and outcomes, both personally and professionally, as a result of engaging in the program. So we argue that that we see, routinely a really strong return on investment for, time and energy and money that you put into it. So obviously, once we figured out what the online MBA is, we'll go through some of the specifics that you're probably very interested in terms of objectives and outcomes, some of the content and design features, some of the ways in which we've scheduled it out, and of course, indeed, some of the costs and some of the sponsorship opportunities that might be available for you as a candidate. And I'll also do a quick preview at the end around actually what we will do next week. Those anyone come back and do some stuff. So everyone pretty happy with that?
Yep.
Is that what you're expecting? Yeah, I like you already, Anne. I like someone who gets in there and has a conversation. We love MBAs who argue and discuss and debate issues. That's exactly the kind of thing we want. And especially online, it's really important that people feel free to share their opinions. It's my job to moderate those opinions if it gets a bit heated, but that's what we want to do. So yeah, so somehow I'm writing on that. So where are we? Let's go. So in general, let me get out of here for a second. Do people have a reasonable idea of what an MBA is, and I guess some of the reasons they want to get into it? So Anne's already Anne's already got points on the board. She's shared her thoughts a little bit around why she's here this evening. Is anyone else prepared to give us a bit of a snapshot about why or how they've come to this evening and looking at this stuff?
Look, it's Amanda here. I've been in business for quite a long time. I come with an engineering background. I'm finding myself in a position in my career that I need to upskill now and revitalise my skills. And whilst I've done that through my experience, I really find that I need to re-engage with technology and take that through to the next step. So that's why I've started to look at further education and looking at engaging with the education community again. So yeah, I'm in a research phase, but I'm also excited to see what's out there.
Cool, thanks, Mandy. Anyone else prepared to share their thoughts at this point? I appreciate we're very new to each other. I can guarantee, though, within 6 months of being part of the MBA community, it's hard to shut your lot up. So I totally get this as part of the process. But yeah, I mean, I think what Mandy's talking about there is fairly similar. So Sunny's going, I'm a CIO for an organisation, love to sharpen my skills and love learning. Cool. Anyone else on the chat line? A couple of people coming through. Let me just open it up. I can see it. There we go. So Hume's on a bus. That's cool. We accept. We're happy with that. So yeah. So the MBA in general. I think the Americans lay claim to have invented it about 110 years ago. Harvard, in particular, lays claim to it. So we'll let them go with it. I suspect the Europeans probably challenge it at some point. But their idea was, especially coming out of, and actually, Andy, it's particularly interesting that you mention it, because actually it was designed to help engineers, predominantly working in large industrial organisations, to get their head around how to run these large-scale organisations more and more effectively. So it was a very small set of subjects that initially those who are doing the Harvard MBA had to do, but it was around leadership, it was around operations management, it was around, I guess, the broader aspects of how to make an organisation run effectively. And that really, in essence, hasn't really changed. I think the way we do it, the mechanism that we employ, some of the curriculum elements, and dare I say, hopefully some of the teaching elements have evolved over time. But essentially, the MBA is a broad spectrum degree. So for those of you who, for whatever reason, are looking to stop being a discipline expert, and have either have been given a significant amount of responsibility to run a larger part of the organisation, or are looking to actually, move in that direction, then an MBA is a very, traditional way in which that would occur. It is designed to give you skills across an organisation rather than, say, established, for example, engineering, marketing, finance, etc. So if you are looking to become a better discipline expert, an MBA is not for you, because it's what we call a broad spectrum degree. It's designed to cover a range of different skills, and this the online MBA here at QUT is designed specifically around that, and a very, as Mandy alluded to, specific domain, which is around digital transformation and the whole notion around what does digital mean for organisations moving forward. So yeah, does that make sense to people? Does that kind of align with what they thought they were getting into? Cool, because obviously QUT has a range of other masters that relate to marketing or finance or project management or whatever, and they go very deep into that space. They'll take you as a professional and give you a whole new set of skills. So Mandy, I don't know what kind of engineer you are, but if you're a reliability engineer, for example, you could go to your heart's content in non-destructive testing or something to that effect. So they're the kind of space that that's not what an MBA is about. In terms of what the QUT online MBA is, I'll share my screen again and give you some thoughts around what we think are some of the key aspects of it. Where are we? So initially, especially, one of the things that this, regardless of what program you do at QUT, in terms of our MBA, this is what we aim for. The program, whether it's the online MBA, our conventional MBA or executive MBA, they are all the curriculum is focused on this aspect, which is really about helping people lead in complex environments. Now, with the digital MBA, we've been very specific around what is the complexity piece there. It is the digital piece. It is the ambiguity surrounding the application of new technologies and new business processes to create entirely new ways of doing business or operating. You would say, we talk about business in general, but really that doesn't matter if you're a non-profit, if you're a government agency, or you're a for-profit organisation. These things tend to cut across. These new ways of doing things, these new models, etc., tend to cut across organisations, and will I say are fairly, ambivalent to what kind of organisation you are. The pressures on government to be more responsive and provide digital solutions to their stakeholders are just as salient and just as immediate as those people staying tuned.
Has stayed there for the rest of their lives? I think that was probably the best thing. That kind of hard
figure out who's talking.
Also, I think the French felt very honoured that she
if everyone can mute their microphones, that would be awesome.
Because of that's what else they want their work.
Hopefully that stops. That's cool. So that's the overall aim. Regardless of what program, that's what we're about, leading in complex environments. So what and I'll go through this in a minute in terms of, you'll notice that a key part of the program is actually a very, very strong leadership piece, because it doesn't matter what skills you've got in terms of knowledge of AI, knowledge of machine learning, knowledge of automation, knowledge of finance, etc., etc. It doesn't mean anything unless you can lead properly and utilize those skills and help other people collaborate and work together to achieve positive outcomes. So you'll notice that in all of our programs, we're very, very strong on the leadership piece. But in terms of the really specific aspects of our online MBA, I'm guessing some of you have read a fair bit about our program. Some of you will have talked to Tim. Some of you will have talked to Catherine. Some of you may have read some stuff online, but this is the snapshot. It's very much around leading digitally aligned organizations. So that's not to say that this is not a technology MBA. We'll make that very clear from the outset. Every unit you do should have some degree of focus on a particular type of technology. But it is not an MBA that will teach you how to code. It is not an MBA that will, teach you the technical aspects of big data. What it will do is equip you as someone who's non-technical, the ability to utilize technologies in the appropriate way in organizations. So it's really about, and I sometimes use this phrase facetiously to say, it gives you enough to be dangerous. It gives you enough knowledge to ask the right questions. It gives you enough awareness about what's going on around there for you to start, having conversations with people and start to think about what ideas, what possibilities, what potential futures might exist for your organisations, given the context of all those things. So just again, be very clear on that. It really is about it. It is equipping and training, the managerial and leadership cohort. It's not about training you how to, basically manipulate extensively big data sets. We would argue that is a technical skill, not a leadership skill. We're very much around, having leaders who are knowledgeable, who are aware, who are cognizant of these things, and very much tuned into the possibilities or the challenges faced by these types of technologies in organizations and helping them move forward. One of the most exciting things is that I suppose those of you who are familiar with QUT will know that over the last 10 years, if not longer, QUT has really been the forefront, of sort of researching and investigating, some of the potential opportunities and issues surrounding the digital economy. And we have a direct line into some of our key centres of research within university, and you will see that directly reflected in our curriculum on a unit by unit basis. And indeed, if you come in for our our weekend intensives, the optional 2-day face-to-face intensives that are part of the program. You'll see leading researchers like Professor Marek Volchevic's, Professor Kevin D'Souza, Professor Lynn Edwards, etc., presenting to you and talking about their latest findings and some of the stuff they're doing around the digital economy and around the future enterprise, which, you know, we really think that's a really important part of the program, to making sure that we are as current as we possibly can be in the kind of things that you guys are learning. So it is a webinar and structured online learning model. So this is not an anywhere, anytime model. The research shows us that those models are very difficult to learn and they're very difficult to actually stick with. You know, online learning is certainly a challenge if you are the only person in the room, inverted commas. We adopt what we call a cohort model. So in the main, you know, there is some flexibility in the system. You can start and you can stop and start again. But essentially, we like everyone to progress largely through the program together. Everyone has a scheduled webinar, and that might be a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday, for example. And that's a thing from 6 till 8. You'll engage with your cohort and your facilitator, much like we're doing now. And in the meantime, you'll have structured assessment pieces. And every week, as I'll mention soon, that there is a set of scheduled, identified activities that you might want to think about doing in order to keep yourself on track for learning. So it is quite a structured process, but that we found is the best way to make sure that everyone really stays connected with the program. They feel that they're really, I guess, in touch with what's going on, and they're really in touch with the cohort. And we've got a really, really strong, I guess, sense of community of people traveling through the program together. So it's one of the things, again, we're very, very faithful to the QET model. So again, for those of you who are very familiar with QET, you'll know that we are, you'll know that we are the university for the real world, and we have been since our inception. And as one of its very early graduates, I can attest that we have done nothing but really stick to that model over the last 30 years. So this program in particular has taken what we've called a phenomenological-based approach to learning. So every unit that you take actually looks at a business issue or a business problem or a business opportunity, and you unpack that over the 10 weeks. So it's not theory 101. We will give you theory, we will give you models, we'll give you frameworks, but essentially every unit basically will ask you to unpack a particular business issue that's relevant to, I guess, digital transformation, and that is the way in which you will learn. It's a far more relevant, applied way of learning that we know is very, very successful in the online environment. So you can, basically, there is the option potentially, depending on what additional units you undertake, you could do it in 2 years. Predominantly though, the model is a 3-year model. So it's your classic part-time. We accept the fact that the majority of people will undertake this program as a part-time model. And as you know, for most people, that's for a master's degree, that's a 3-year period. So they are 12 units in the program. They're all 10 weeks long. I mentioned before, we have an optional face-to-face intensive for every unit. And of course, we're kicking off very soon in April. I believe it's April 19th is our opening weekend, basically. So that's a snapshot. Before I go into more detail, does anyone have any questions or queries at this point? No? The only other thing I'll add is that as of last year, some of you may have seen some press around this, that one of the things that actually is unique to QET in Australia is that we are the only university in the country that has a strategic relationship with MIT. So as part of the program, there is the option to basically go to Boston, Cambridge, and spend 2 weeks there with MIT staff in our MIT immersion and learn literally from, I guess, some of the best researchers in the world in terms of leadership, entrepreneurship, and digital transformation. And it's a beautiful complement to the Digital MBA. It is an additional component to the program, and it is optional. But yeah, definitely one that we're very excited about. We think the alignment between QET and MIT is very, very strong in terms of our applied focus, in terms of our, I guess, commitment to excellence. And some of the things that are really, I guess, kind of important coming out of that relationship is that participants will receive an MIT email for life. They will receive basically alumni status for life. And for those of you who are real suckers for punishment, and you can find someone to fund it because it's very, very expensive, you can actually go, it would allow you entry into the 1-year MBA program called the Sloan Fellows Program at MIT. So that's a big deal. Again, as you can imagine, the selection process in MIT is pretty tight. But, you know, if you participate in the QET MIT immersion, then you get automatic entry into that. I will say it's rather confronting. It's about $120,000 US, and the exchange rate at the moment is pretty rough for us. So I suspect you to start saving your pennies now. We'll find someone to fund it for you. But nevertheless, the MIT immersion is a lot more cost effective and definitely a huge opportunity. And we've got about 55 people going this year for the first time ever to Boston. Although that said, we are anxiously looking at, I guess, the coronavirus situation and hoping that won't impede that process. But yeah, that's another key part of the program. Everyone happy with that piece? Yep. Thanks, Anne. I can see you nodding. It's good. Lots of feedback. So, program specific. So again, for people who want to ask questions, who want some more detail, please just yell out, or as I say, Tim's on the chat line there. Just ask the questions there, and we're going to go on. So, program specifics. As I mentioned before, most programs around the country, indeed around the world, tend to teach one discipline subject at a time. So you'll do economics, then you do finance, you do marketing, you know, economics, whatever it is, right? The reality is that, and that's a good model. We do that at QET, and we do it pretty well. When we designed this program, and some of you who've been looking at an online MBA for a while will probably recognize the fact that QET was quite late to the game on this one. And the reason for it was we really wanted to make sure that the program we put up online was, you know, equivalent in quality and experience to what we do face to face. Again, for those of you who've been looking at QET for a while, you'll know that, you know, an executive MBA, we're number 2 in the country, or an MBA, we're number 3 in the country, and basically we're number 1 in Queensland for both those programs. So we've got a bit of a reputation to uphold, and our alumni really hold us to that. You know, they look at us with some degree of scrutiny and say, make sure that you keep your program, you know, as high quality as possible. So when we looked at this and we thought, well, we're going to redesign a completely new program, the reality is that most people don't wake up in the morning and go, cool, today I'll have an economics problem. They wake up with a problem they've got to solve that probably requires a bit of risk management, a bit of finance, a bit of economics, a bit of leadership, a bit of marketing. So around about the same time, we were starting to look at what was happening over in Europe, in Finland in particular, where they're adopting what's called a phenomenological-based approach to learning. And that really is the learning through the unpacking of an issue, as opposed to looking and then applying disciplines in their, I guess, kind of a multidisciplinary way, rather than in isolation. So for those of you, anyone who's online who has a health background and is familiar with the notion of differential diagnosis, this is exactly what that is. The patient is in the middle of the room, and that patient is diagnosed and collaboratively with a dietitian, with a surgeon, with a GP, with a physio, etc. All right? So it's really getting multiple. What we do is we train you guys to adopt multiple perspectives and apply multiple disciplines to the execution of a problem or an opportunity. And that's the way, and you'll see in a second, that's the way we've really, you know, designed the whole program. And this is the program. So this is what you do. Over a 3-year period, you'll do 12 units. And you notice they're in sequence, so year 1, year 2, year 3. And they're designed to escalate in terms of their complexity. They're designed to deepen, I guess, in terms of their, you know, sort of addressing of more complex problems. But we're not too harsh too early. We basically build up your skills and capabilities so that by the end of it, you have very strong confidence and capability around how to address really ambiguous scenarios. So in that first year, for example, those of you who might join us in April, you'll be, the first unit is completing in complex environments. And what we do there is we give you some strategy tools, some marketing tools, and some design thinking tools in combination to unpack a problem. And if you saw my video the other day, you'll see that this time I'm going to get you to unpack, if you like, how does Apple TV Plus compete against Netflix and against Disney Plus? Now, so that's the phenomenon, that's the context, that's the situation. How many people are really experienced at running and managing online platforms like Netflix? See, I asked that question, but there's always usually one person going, well, actually I spent 3 years in the US. And, right? So the reality is that most of us know about that context as a consumer. I'd be surprised if at least 80 or 90% of you don't has some exposure to Netflix or Disney Plus or even Apple TV Plus. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to say, well, you know, you've got Apple TV Plus. Right? You've got Disney, who are an absolute monster. The amount of, you know, material they have at disposal is the scale is, you know, it's frightening, frankly. And then you've got Netflix, who were the original bad boys of the scene, right? They were the ones that were supposedly disruptive 5 years ago. Guess what? They're now the established player facing challenges from Disney Plus, Apple, and indeed others. So what we're going to do over 10 weeks is you guys are going to figure out how on earth is Apple TV Plus going to compete against these two, you know, really, really capable players. That's a, you know, that's an example of the phenomenon you will unpack. The second unit you will do, last year, I don't think the guys have figured out what will be happening this year, but last year they looked at basically how can Telstra afford, or can it afford, the introduction of 5G and the infrastructure surrounding that. So essentially that unit teaches you to basically determine the health, if you like, of an organization. So you learn how to, I guess, interrogate a financial statement and undertake financial statement analysis, and you can really figure out to what extent is the organization in a sustainable way, its weaknesses, its strengths from a financial perspective, and how do you make strategic decisions based off that. The final unit is the digital leader there in the first year, and that's, again, this year, just because it was a fantastic case. The guys unpacked the whole cricket saga. It wasn't super digital, but it really got to the heart of what it was to be a global superstar and what that meant when your every move is being scrutinized and there's a camera on you everywhere. And what does that mean in terms of your response, your reaction, your ethical frame, your bias, etc. So again, a great unit. So that bottom, that second bottom rung there, where we've got the digital leader, leading teams for growth, and digital transformation, is really your leadership journey. We take that incredibly seriously. A lot of MBA programs will basically teach you a couple of leadership theories. We are very serious and we're very deliberate at building your leadership capability. So that first unit is about you and your leadership capabilities and what you want to do and where you're at. The second unit really gets to the heart of how you actually lead as a coach in digital environments, particularly in the context of increasing automation inside organizations. And of course, that final piece is how do you actually lead large-scale digital transformation efforts? And what you'll notice there is, if you're able to see it relatively clearly, is that there's a bit of there's an emergence going on. So in this first half, this first year, we're really saying, what does the organization look like? How does it sit? How is it positioned? How is it competing? How healthy is it? You know, how sustainable is it from a financial perspective? And you know, where are you at as a leader? The second phase is, right, where do we want to go? So you're establishing new ventures. You're looking at, in that middle unit there, building financial resilience. You're looking at how do we grow as an organization? You know, what kind of mechanisms can we employ to grow sustainably? And of course, as I said, leading teams for growth is about your skills and capabilities as a coach. The final phase really is, how do we take the organization? So we figured out where it is. We figured out where we want to go. How do we make that change? And that's the final phase. And it's obviously the most complex. And at that point, in that year 3, you really are, I guess, encouraged and expected to bring all the knowledge that you've already covered to bear. You know, you're expected to bring all the stuff you did in year 1, all the stuff you did in year 2, to really start executing in year 3, because we're talking about big, meaty problems. We're talking about changing business models. We're talking about changing the culture and the governance and the structure of organizations. We're talking about leading a change process, which, you know, for those of you who have suffered the pain of working in organizations, working with people, you know that is the biggest piece of all. And you'll notice that last, toughest, most complex piece is the last unit in the whole program in terms of content unit. So that's that stuff. You'll notice right across the bottom, again, a piece that we're very excited about, and we've seen some really, really good outcomes this year from our existing cohort, is that at the end of every year, you will undertake your own project. And of course, it is designed so that you can start to put some of the stuff that you've been learning into practice if you haven't already. The great thing at MBA is pretty much every night you have a webinar, you could use that skill the next day. Again, that's a key part of KET's, I guess, kind of value proposition is that we really want you to learn it Monday, use it Tuesday. That is part of our thing. Everything we do is designed to be useful. But these projects in particular are great. They are designed to really help you gain some real outcomes in your context and really let you chart your own journey in terms of what you'd like to do, what you'd like to study, how you'd like to play that out. So they're essentially mini projects that you collaborate with one of our team members and one of our academics, and you say, look, I'm going to investigate this, that, or the next thing. So this year we've had somebody in a mining organisation investigate the extent to which wastewater can be used for other purposes rather than just sitting there doing nothing, particularly in the context where increasingly, I guess, water is an issue. We had someone investigate the possibility of a new product in an insurance line. We've had someone look at the use of VR in a teaching context, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So some of these projects with someone else basically develop a proposal to utilize a whole new reporting system to give consumers in her public sector organization a whole new range of reports that are absolutely essential for what they do and would be a huge value add from the agency's perspective. So it's some really good outcomes of people really leveraging the skills they've been learning in the MBA and in direct, immediate utility inside their organizations. So that essentially is the kind of thing that you'd cover from a unit perspective over the 3-year period. Does anyone want to ask questions or have any queries about that at this point? No?
No, Adrian did ask if we'd share the presentation, and Adrian, we will.
Sorry, say again, Tim, are you a bit low there?
Sorry, Adrian said, would we share the presentation, and we will share the presentation afterwards.
Yeah, so the team will send out a quick email tomorrow, and we can shoot that through to you. But yeah, there's another question coming through.
Not really. Kirsty mentioned that it's all around learning with problem-solving scenarios to unpack and then work is good to utilise in a short term.
Cool. So essentially, what we've done, I don't want to bore you all to tears with curriculum design, but you're probably aware too that we're a triple accredited organisation. Why do you care about that? Those of you who come and join the program and have the pleasure of being taught by me, you'll know that my 2 favourite words in the whole world are "so what." You're triple accredited, so what? Why do I care? Basically, those of you, it allows you to almost sort of say around the world. As you can imagine, there are millions of MBAs. In fact, in Australia, I believe there's up to 120 programs offered in one form or another. So when you say that you basically have an MBA from a triple accredited organisation, immediately, especially in Europe and the US, they'll know that you're part of that 1% of organisations that are heavily, I guess, kind of validated in terms of what they offer, the quality of education, the quality of the curriculum, and the fact that you're actually, paying for something that is of a high quality and gives you, that you're learning what you're supposed to learn as an MBA. So what you'll notice here is that basically, even though it's we've based the curriculum around phenomenon and business issues, that underpinning it, you're still getting your accounting, you're still getting your finance, you're still getting accounting, you're still getting law, et cetera, and you're still getting strategy and marketing, but you are getting those, it is wrapped up in such a way that it is far more attuned to a digital context, especially that last year. And that's where we tap into people like Professor Kevin D'Souza, Professor Michael Roseman, as I say, Professor Melinda Edwards, who really can talk to that digital piece really strongly. Right now, in terms of establishing new ventures, the current cohort are working with a range of startups at QUT. So again, we really try to make this as real world as possible. So the digital cohort is currently working with about 6 startups at QUT and around the Southeast Queensland area, and are actively consulting into those startups to figure out how they can improve, what they can change, how they can evolve, and how they can scale up. So again, some real skills in that space. And one of the key things I actually do like about that unit is one of the final assessment pieces is that you have to determine, so over the course of 10 weeks, they get exposed to at least 10 different entrepreneurial minds. And one of the things we require of you guys is that when you finish that unit, you have to really reflect on your own your entrepreneurial mindset. So even if you're someone in a large organization, you're still required, as you know, to be innovative. That's the thing, right? What does that mean for you in large organization? How do you have that entrepreneurial mindset? What does it really mean in your context? So I think it's actually, again, one of those really positive, strong things coming out of the program is really reflecting on yourself and how that's going to translate into your practice as a professional moving forward. Again,
Glenn,
not,
I don't know if you can hear.
Yep, say again.
Sorry, hi. I just wanted to ask you, that you've labored a lot on leadership, and for any digital transformation, we're looking at cultural transformation. But I think very large number of organizations, whether they're doing a digital transformation or not, have got very dysfunctional cultures. So that makes it double difficult to try to do a digital transformation if your fundamental culture has got issues. I'm new to Australia, but sorry, somebody's got the radio on. Can they put that off?
Yeah, I can hear some background noise somewhere. Yeah, no, I agree with you in terms of, there's one more in particular who I love in the program. She's just amazing, very smart mind. But, we had some pretty strong discussions early on in the program that her thoughts around digital transformation was largely that it's, the digital piece is the most important. I'm like, look, it's a factor, but I'm with you. Like the whole human piece is actually the far more fundamental piece in terms of achieving genuine positive transformation. And I will say that QT program is really about transformation. We understand that disruption is a word. We understand that disruption for some people is a thing, but we're really looking to train people to look for new opportunities and transform organizations, industries, economies for the better. And in order to achieve that, as you say, getting people on board, getting them aligned and trained is really important. And that's why we do have that, I guess, kind of progression, that we do look at you yourself first. The simple argument being that if you can't lead yourself, how can you lead others? So we try to at least start you on that journey of becoming how to lead yourself better. That second phase absolutely is on a team by team, division by division basis. How can you coach others to really move forward and have confidence and trust in you that this is the right direction? And of course, then there's a whole new space to think about and use about in terms of how do you actually manage and lead a system. So yes, it is absolutely, we would totally 100% agree that it's easier to say and hard to do. But that's why we've invested so much time in the program allowing that leadership discussion, because we argue that all the rest is meaningless, as you point out, if you don't have the capability and you don't have the, the capacity to actually make that change happen. So yeah, so any other questions on the curriculum, comments, observations?
Yeah, there's a question around if you have a degree in something else from QT, do you get credit?
If you're an undergraduate degree, no. One of the so there's obviously if you have a postgraduate degree, depending on the nature of that postgraduate degree, it is possible we can give you credit. But that would be a one-on. We can certainly have those one-on-one discussions. But it would have to be a postgraduate degree. So if you've got an undergraduate degree, that allows you entry into the program, assuming you've got the requisite experience, etc. So, Tim, do you want to just quickly scope out the requirements for the experience and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so as Glenn said, so it's a postgraduate degree, not an honours degree. So that was obviously an undergraduate with an extension. So if you have a postgraduate degree with a GPA of 4.5, you would need 3 years professional work experience and 1 or 2 years worth of leadership experience. If you don't have an undergraduate degree, or you have not achieved the 4.5 GPA, you'd need some work experience, and you'd need 7 years professional work experience and 1 to 2 in a leadership role. And we would limit you then to the graduate certificate, as Glenn has highlighted. That's the first 3 units and then the high impact project. And provided you get a 4.5 GPA across those units, you can then move into the rest of the program.
Yeah, cool. So for those of you who are pretty young and don't have that managerial experience yet, we love you, we want you back. But unfortunately for you at this point, we're really looking for people with experience in terms of supervising people or having a complex role where there's multiple stakeholders at play. The simple reason is that that's where we have good discussions. The whole point of an MBA and our online MBA is no different, is that we know, and we're very clear on this, that the learning comes from the cohort interactions. So we really see some huge learnings. People like myself can point in the right direction, can share some, useful models and some cool tools. But it's having discussions with your cohort members, sharing failures, sharing successes. That's another layer of learning that occurs that arguably an MBA is far deeper than simply listening to a lecturer or an academic, if that makes sense. So what we really, we're really looking for people in the program who have like diverse levels of experience, who are, have experience dealing with complexity, dealing with challenges, overcome them, maybe not. They're all great things to bring to the table in terms of the value of the cohort, because we really are, really committed to this notion that the cohort is where the learning is best utilized. And that is exactly why we looked at across the world, and we looked at all the best online programs in the world. And one of the things that was really consistent was this notion that basically they offered an optional opportunity for people in the online program to get together physically. And for those of you who work in virtual teams, the virtual teams work best if they have a chance to come together, calibrate, get to know each other, connect physically, and then go away and interact and work virtually. And that's exactly the model we will look to replicate. So we know that large successful organizations in the world, this is the model they do, whether it's the Cisco's, the Amazons, the Googles, whatever it might be. The way in which they manage their virtual teams is like that. Periodically, they give them the opportunity to connect physically, interact physically, before they go away and interact virtually. So at the start of every 10-week period, at this point, we're hosting a 2-day face-to-face intensive here in Brisbane at our executive centre. So this is, basically you'll see here one of our classrooms, and this is where we would basically have that situation. So this is exactly one of the classrooms that we would be in, if you can see that. We've, as you can imagine, outside of here, we've got rooms where everyone can connect digitally. If you can't make the face-to-face digitally, then basically if you can't make face-to-face, physically, you can interact via Zoom as well. So we have it scheduled in such a way that you can still interact. Obviously, it's not the same as being here physically, but we certainly want to include you in that space. And during those weekends, we do a range of things. Predominantly, the goal of them is to actually set you up for the unit coming. So there are a range of exercises, activities, discussions based around whether it's the entrepreneurship unit, whether it's your strategy, marketing, design thinking unit, whether it's your sort of accounting and finance units, whatever it might be. But we also have things that Tim will organise in terms of careers events. As I say, we get guest speakers in from the Centre for Future Enterprise, and we really look to make these weekends a really great opportunity for you to round off your skills and your experiences as an MBA. So we know from our experience running other programs that it's not just about the content. We know that the MBA is designed to be a range of things. It's about networking. It's about getting to know people. It's about exposing and I guess expanding your horizons. So we really use those weekends as a way of helping you do that. So they're both, enjoyable, useful, and valuable in terms of your investment of coming here. So we have people flying in from Mackay. We have people flying in from Hobart. We have people flying in from Melbourne to attend these visits. They're all scheduled throughout the year, so you know exactly when they're happening, and that way you can make the most of it. So that's I think a key part of a program. What we've observed since we've kicked off the program is that this is a really, really valuable way in which the cohort gets to know each other. And that really helps the discussions, when we basically are, throughout the 10-week period, when people are talking in their sessions and on their Microsoft Teams environment in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. It really means that it's a really positive experience. People know who they're talking to. Right, where am I up to?
A couple of questions.
Dylan's asking, for work across time zones. So Dylan, I've got to be honest, probably not. We're not at the state yet where we can offer, I mean, obviously every Zoom session, well, let me backtrack that a bit. It depends what you want from the quality of your experience. Obviously, we like a scenario like this where we've got multiple people online, and, you know, basically you'll see next week in particular how we start to have a lot of discussions, and we'll drive a lot of, you know, I'm doing a lot of talking tonight. Ideally, it'll be a 50-50 split. You guys would be, you know, talking as much as I am. So Dylan, absolutely, depending on your capacity as a student, theoretically, you could watch the recordings of these sessions. You could follow our weekly instructions for your study. You could do the readings, do the assessment, and get through. Would that be the richest experience for you? Probably not. Could you get through and achieve your MBA and learn something from it? Yeah, sure. But it really depends what you want to get out of it and how you want to go about doing it, if that makes sense.
I'll be doing that.
So for the project, yes, we assign you a supervisor, if you like, for lack of a better term, and they do operate in that kind of consultation mode. But yeah, you're not completely abandoned to the wind, but there is that flexibility of you dictating, if you like, within boundaries, of course, what you want to do and how you want to do it. But yes, absolutely, everyone is assigned an academic to work through their project with them.
That'll be great. That'll be good. Thank you. Make it earlier in the day.
I think we're good so far. Let me go back to sharing my screen.
Make it earlier in the day, about 11 o'clock in the morning.
Like somebody else sent me a call.
Jim,
Right, thank you.
can you mute Jim?
Okay.
They card.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity to mute them.
I'll just
That's cool. Right, what are we up to? So in terms of how you learn, so it sounds like some of you are, you know, experienced students already. It's highly likely, as Tim says, if you haven't got an undergraduate degree, that is not a barrier anymore to undertaking a full MBA. All it means is that what we do, assuming you've got the requisite kind of work experience and supervisory experience, but you haven't got an undergraduate degree, that's fine. What we do is we enroll you in the graduate certificate pathway. And as soon as you complete the 4 units that are associated with the graduate certificate and you get a GPA of 4.5 out of 7 or above, then we can migrate you to the full program. It is largely an administrative track in that you are with the same cohort, doing the same things, progressing like everybody else. So from that perspective, the advantage of having an undergraduate degree is you're probably used to studying in a university environment, use some degree of understanding about what's involved and what's expected. I will say that we'd like to think that our approach is a little less impersonal than what some of you may have experienced in an undergraduate world. But nevertheless, we appreciate that some people haven't necessarily studied at a university level before, and that can be a little bit confronting. So the way we've situated it is that we have 3 primary tools that we employ to help you learn. And the first one is that thing on the left-hand side, which is what we call the Cohort Model. Now, I don't want to get too bent out of shape about it, but largely it's an online asset that we send to you 2 weeks ahead before the unit starts. And we have a range of activities that are broken down on a week-by-week basis for you to undertake. So you can, basically those materials are device agnostic, so they can be read on a phone, laptop, whatever, doesn't really matter. And at each phase at Connect, it'll tell you what you should be doing with your cohort. So typically, even if you're not working on a group assignment together, we will still say to you, we will still organize you in study groups, if you like, what we call them action learning groups. And we'll say, hey, this week in your cohort, you should connect and talk about this issue. Then on the observe section, we say, hey, at this point in Apple TV Plus's journey, what kind of consumers do you think they're trying to attack? Have a discussion as a group around this piece. The address is some of the theory you'll, hit that week, and it'll give you some readings or a video or some material to absorb, preferably before the webinar. So you have a good, rich discussion to the webinar. The clarify piece then asks you to go back and say, okay, given all that you've thought about, read about, seen, heard, where do you think Apple TV Plus is right now with its consumer base? Moving through into Hone. Hone is a thing where if people are really into a particular topic like business models or, you know, the 7 P's of marketing or, you know, digital transformation piece like Christensen's theory of disruption, we can give you extra work, extra material there to delve down into. Obviously, we have an execute piece there, which says, look, given that you've got 3 weeks left of your assignment, you really should be at this level by now, or you may want to undertake these 3 key steps. So what it allows is, for those of you who are very experienced, very confident students, you don't necessarily need to use this model, but it will give you a good insight about what's been covered on a week-by-week basis. For those of you who are new to the learning process, those of you who like a structure to follow, it's all there, basically, and you can just chip away at that on a week-by-week basis. Complementing that, on the other side, of course, is our 2 major tools for collaboration and interaction, and that's our Microsoft Teams environment. So everyone, as part of KET, when you become a KET student, obviously you have access to Office 365 suite. As part of that, we put you into a Microsoft Teams environment. And again, for those of you who are not familiar with Microsoft Teams, don't stress. It's kind of like Facebook for a house, if that makes sense, and a commercial, I guess, kind of basically interaction and collaboration platform where our academic staff will interact with you, answer your queries, answer your questions, post materials. Ideally, you'll be talking to each other and responding to each other. There's a chat function where you can set up your own conversations in your action learning groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I mentioned before Zoom, like we're doing now, where on a weekly basis, you'll connect with your academic team members and they'll run you through some theory, have some discussion with you, I guess, and that is your main live contact point around that sort of stuff. Any query or questions on that stuff? No, all good. Now, the exciting bit, not. So obviously, for those of you who haven't gone online, you'll notice that basically, yeah, unfortunately, there is a price attached to the program. You know, if only we were in 1990 and everything was free, but it's not, unfortunately. We like to think of it, Tim and I, as an investment. As I was saying before, we've seen numerous examples over the last 5 or 6 years of how people have really grown and benefited personally and professionally from undertaking the program. In fact, what we notice is, in some cases, almost by joining the program, people start to, I guess, talk to other people, talk to people they wouldn't talk to normally. They certainly get on people's radars going, oh, okay, she's doing an MBA. She must be pretty switched on. We should think about it for this project, this project. So we do, not that it happens all the time, but we definitely see an almost instant bump in people's, I guess, exposure inside organizations when they undertake an MBA. So yeah, so in terms of price, currently our online MBA is the same price as our MBA, which is all up $62,000, just over $62,000. That's $5,200 per unit for 12 units. That is charged per unit. And the program is eligible for fee help. So I must admit, as an academic, that is my weak spot. But my understanding is that if you apply to our program, you get accepted into the program, you literally then, I think there might even be a link in QUT's website where you can basically click on that link, apply to the government for fee help. And then from there, I've never ever heard of anyone being rejected for fee help. From there, basically your tuition fee will be taken into account when you undertake your tax, et cetera, and you basically pay the fees through your tax, essentially. So it's, you know, for lack of a better term, it's a line of credit from the government for you to fund your professional development, which is, you know, that I think it's only just recently been available in the UK. And it was amazing to me when I went over 3 or 4 years ago, they almost had no domestic MBA applicants at all. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, do people in the UK not understand the value of professional development and getting an MBA? And they're like, well, it's just literally people have to pay cash up front, and it's really prohibitive. Thankfully, you know, it's not ideal, but we have, you know, fee help where people can actually, I guess, kind of pay their degree through their tax. That said, Tim will be very keen for me to tell you that for a limited number of people, if you meet certain, meet certain demographic, pathways, that there is a 20% fee reduction sponsorship available. So if you are interested in that, make sure you contact Tim and get some details on that. But largely, we're looking for, as you can imagine, underrepresented groups, people in regional areas, et cetera, where we can look to support their journey basically as an MBA. So yeah, make sure you don't discount yourself from that process. don't naturally assume that you won't be eligible. You indeed may be eligible, so I would highly recommend a conversation with Tim to see whether that's indeed the case. The only other piece of the puzzle that can't be fee helped is the MIT immersion tour. That's $8,000 roughly, plus your flight. So effectively what happens there, that $8,000, you wouldn't believe the price of accommodation in Boston. That largely covers your Boston accommodation and some additional activities. QUT Business School funds and subsidizes effectively the MIT tuition fees. So you don't actually have to pay the tuition fees that MIT charge. All we're asking for people to do is to pay for their accommodation and their flights over there. So if any of you know about the significant costs associated with the US education system, you'll know that's a really good deal. Still expensive, not going to deny that, but in terms of what MIT usually charge, we're really excited about that, because it really does open up that opportunity to some of our people here in Australia as part of our program. So that's the basics. I think we're down to the point now of people asking questions that might be specific to those. So let me answer some of these stuff that's online. So Gavin, I hope you're not suggesting I mute myself. I would be hurt, but Tim wouldn't be surprised. He tells me to mute myself all the time. How long the weekly workshops, the webinars? They are 2 hours long, so they're 6 to 8. For the incoming cohort, I believe that you will be on a Thursday night. So yeah, we're not so cruel as to put them on Friday nights. That would be awful. Sorry, excuse me a second. For those with a QUT grad cert, so if you've already got a grad cert, it's highly likely we'd probably be able to give you about 36 credit points of advanced standing. It does depend how old that grad cert qualification is. Ideally, it's in the last 5 years. Depending on the qualification, we could probably go to 10, but that's really starting to push it. Anything beyond that, unfortunately, we're not able to give credit. Mba and QUT won't recognise qualifications from that far back. But that's again, don't be sorry, Gavin. I suspect you and Tim will be good friends by the end of this. Where are we? So effectively, Shani, again, it's a kind of one-on-one conversation with Tim and I around the nature of your qualification, how old is it, what was it, and we can go from there. But by and large, if you've got a grad cert, we can give about 36 credit points worth. That's about 3 units. And what we usually do is, depending on the grad cert, we'll look at what units are most appropriate for you to swap out. If it's something that's completely random and doesn't really align with some of the discipline content that we cover, usually what we do is we take out the high impact projects, if that makes sense. But so there's, I'm not gonna lie, there's a bit of sugarling usually, but we're really keen to try and make that work because we understand that people have invested already in postgraduate education and that we don't want to double up. So, we're really keen to try and make that work. I will say that we don't do recognition of prior learning per se. So the only time we can give credit is if it's like basically, we can make sure it's equivalent and recognised as an Australian qualification framework, AQF level 8 or 9. I don't want to get technical on you, but that's kind of where we're at. So anything that's done at postgraduate level, we can give credit for. If you've done the AICD, we could probably look at some credit there as well. So if you've done the company directors course, we can play with that. But again, they're one-on-one conversations. The 2-year piece is, again, is kind of complicated. So 2018 would be sweet. So 2-year piece is a little complicated. That involves you, basically doing some external study tours, et cetera, But again, we can talk about that on a one-to-one basis. Involve the company's charity and community fund. I understand desires to engage in project-led application. So in terms of I think, if I'm reading your question properly, you're saying, do I really have to do it for part of my organization? Is that correct? Or are you saying, is it possible the projects are still part of my company, but not? Yes, absolutely. Sorry. So yes, look, we have no desire to get in the way of what you think is useful. What we do as supervisors and educators is to say, you need to go a bit deeper, you need a bit more, you need to think about other stuff. But the focus of the project look, that can be anything you like. I mean, it doesn't even have to be on your organization. Like, say, if you're a bit of a career switcher, say you're in health now and you wanted to move into event management, for argument's sake, right? You could specifically do your project on some aspect of event management that allowed you to talk to, you know, your emerging experiences in that space, rather than saying, you know, I'll learn on the job type thing. So really, we're looking for any which way this is useful for you to play it out. So, unfortunately, no name, just iPhone. Do you have any examples of what people get from the degree in terms of jobs?
Can be very
Loads of examples. Tim, have you got any on top? I've got a couple on top of my head, but
it can be really broad, to be honest with you. So it depends what kind of opportunity you're looking for, but a number of our students go into roles in some of the large, big consulting firms from any of our programs. Some people move into sideward step from an engineering role, which is obviously quite disciplined, into more of a leadership role across a broad base, different organisation. Some people move up into sort of general management positions, and a number of people take sideward steps from a sort of a discipline role that they're in at the moment into more of a generalist role into an organisation that they haven't worked in before, or industry they haven't worked in.
Yeah, and I've even had people, like, my favourite story of all time is, Gemma, who was a paramedic, came to our program, did a unit in our regular MBA where she was presenting to some PwC senior partners. And long story short, they said, we'd like your work. Why don't you have a coffee with us? And eventually she said, look, you know what? I really appreciate the opportunity, but I'm really into making the Queensland Ambulance Service a better place to work and to succeed and grow. I'm going to stay with them and I'm going to pursue a career in there. So I will say that probably 50 or 60% of people tend to sort of move up to their organisation or move into similar roles in other organisations that suddenly recognise their capacity, I guess, in terms of what they do and what they don't do. We have, you know, in our current program, we've got people who have had their own business and then transitioned into corporate and vice versa. We've got people who run and own family businesses and struggling with the challenges of how to keep those businesses alive in a contemporary environment. So one of the things I will say is that, you know, the MBA is designed to be very personal. I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive because you're all technically learning the same stuff, but it is designed in such a way that anyone can extract value out of it and apply it to their particular context. So about 50-60% of people are what we call career enhancers. Another 30 or 40-ish% people are what we call career switchers. So they are looking to move sideways, to do new stuff. And that can even, you know, be someone like Mandy, for example, who perhaps a very successful engineer, but looking for something completely different. And using those good discipline skills in the career and in their say engineering, but now are managing projects. So theoretically a completely different role in the same context. And we see that a lot as well. So yeah, so one thing we do talk about, in fact, is that really you ought to be talking, as soon as you join the program, talking to someone like Tim about what is it you're looking for. Tim is a fantastic mentor and coach around career aspirations. He's not going to find you a new job, but he will really help you figure out what it is you actually want, the kind of things you should be doing to craft your own career, and the kind of steps you should be taking right from the beginning of the program to leverage the program into kind of that ultimate goal. So that's something we're really keen on doing and working on with you. So yeah, look, we've definitely got, I think even in the current digital cohort, at least, so about 20% of the cohort are from mining organisations. We've got about, again, 10 to 50% government. I've got 2 or 3 people in the, you know, sort of digital kind of marketing, digital engagement space. We've got a fair few from insurance and finance sort of backgrounds, don't we, Tim? Just trying to think. And we've got one of our favourite. You'll see our story coming out in the next couple of days about Shelley, who runs a winery down in Hobart. So she's a Brizzy girl. You know, classic story of basically, you know, left school, straight into work, really successful career in terms of customer service and customer engagement. At a point in her career where she knows she needs to do something a bit different, that she needs something like an MBA to really enhance and really, give us some skills to take the next level. So she's one of those ones who is quite happy. You imagine being in Hobart all the time, quite happy to come up to the warmth of Brisbane every 12 weeks or so, hang out with the cohort for a couple of days, really absorb and catch up with family as well, and then fly back to Hobart, finish her units and come back again. So there's a nice little story coming out on MBA News about her and how the program's really worked for her in that space. And she's really looking to, I guess, kind of like, take learnings from all her 20 years of working customer service, plus the MBA, to basically establish her own venture down the track. So Sunny, I'm a CEO from multinational, moved up to experience. So yeah, totally. That's a great story. Been through many transformations. So yeah, look, I think in some cases like Sunny, I mean, people like Sunny are probably the perfect, I would argue, key to MBA, in that everyone should bring some good experience to the table. And that's where and arguably, Sunny, in some cases, we won't necessarily teach you anything new, but we'll give you a different way to think about it. And you'll be able to reframe that and go, okay, now that makes more sense to me. Intuitively, I kind of got why it failed, but now I really know some key insights into why it failed. So everyone should bring some pain and some suffering to the table for an MBA, because they are great stories and great experience and great learnings for everyone else in the program. But yeah, absolutely, Sonny. I mean, when we've got, as I say, I should, you should check out some of the research that we have at QUT. As I say, people like Professor Kevin D'Souza, Michael Roseman, Marek Kowalczyk, etc. These are all leading lights in this area of digital transformation and digital disruption. So I suspect that, Sonny, hopefully we can, I guess, kind of take your thoughts to a whole new level as well. We'd really feel like we would be failing in our promise if we didn't actually give you a whole new insight into some things that are happening over the next couple of decades. Cool. Any verbal questions? Yes, no, maybe. So, Anne, you're still on mute. I'm pretty sure Anne's asking a question. This is the thing, you forget you're on mute.
Unmute. There we go.
Cool. Nice.
I just wanted to know, like, I've got a laptop. Do I have to download like a big program with the university to get everything moving? Like, will Tim help me with that, or someone help me with that?
Tim won't, because Tim's technologically challenged, frankly. Tim struggles with his iPhone.
I thought you were clever.
Wow.
Well, in other ways.
No, and we run an orientation weekend, so we have IT professionals that can help you.
Thank goodness.
From a downloading perspective, we use this for this Zoom facilities to do the webinars, and there's a very interactive web-based learning materials that you can access through an online course. It's fairly easy, but that first intensive weekend, there will be some of our IT professionals there to help you log on to QUT and get sorted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for those of you who aren't able to come to Brisbane, of course, we'll provide remote support. But essentially, yeah, as Tim says, it's all largely internet-based and web-based. There will be occasions where we will obviously issue kind of papers for you to read, so PDFs. Largely, I think we've got, like, even the textbooks are basically available as a download. But to your point, and they're not this sort of bulk thing where you have to sort of spend hours doing that. They'll just be on a needs by needs basis. You can draw down on that material and do what you like with it. The one thing we'd say is, and I don't think we've got a recommended headset, but I know some people, and you don't have to go crazy, but I think some people do like having a headset to use. When if they're doing the webinars. It just depends on the nature of your situation and where you're at in terms of, are you at home, is there likely a disruption, etc., or at work. But I know that some of the current team, I might even ask, there's a couple of pretty switched on people in the program who are tech focused. We've got a teacher, a head of a department up in Mackay. He's a bit crazy for his tools. we'll get some recommendations off him around what kind of, for people who want to continue the program around, say, headsets that are good enough. But yeah, that's the only thing we'd really recommend, I guess, potentially.
Yep.
So just a question on that. You're saying that it starts on the 19th of April. Is it the orientation weekend?
Yes.
Okay, and it's that weekend that we can sort out equipment and PCs and headsets and the like, because I'm going to definitely need to upgrade as well.
If Tim and I are doing our job properly, hopefully we'll be able to send you out. Actually, Tim, can you make a little note, please? Just in terms of, look, the learning design team usually got all this squared away, but just in case they haven't, hopefully we'll be able to send you out as part of your kind of preparation package some advice around that piece. But you know, again, we would argue that as long as you got a pretty reasonably, you know, newish laptop or PC, then you got a pretty reasonable internet connection, then you're gonna be fine. Obviously, if you're super regional, I don't know where you are, Mandy, but if you're super regional and you have some challenges, we might have one guy who's dialing in from New Guinea this year. That'll be interesting to see how he plays out. But yeah, so we're basically, that's the key part there. And again, if whatever night the internet in your area is struggling, at least it'll be recorded, so that the next day you get basically a link to the recording, and you can basically stream that or download that. Again, not as good as participating live, of course, but you know, as we all know in Australia, our internet is somewhat hit and miss on occasion. So you know, that's all part of the process. I live on the bayside of Brisbane, and it's a struggle sometimes. So so yeah, cool. Yeah, look, super happy. People head off. Totally get it. That's part of the process. For those of you who are about to head off, feel free to connect Tim or I for more queries or questions. But yeah, thanks for being part of the process. And hopefully for some of you, we'll see you next week when we go through Christensen's theory of disruption. I'm just going to look at any more questions here. I have to go. Yeah. Don't think we'll be covering too much on GDPR in the law side, largely because it's a European context, and that's not something that's hit us right now. I will admit that that's not something that's in the current program. It could emerge over time if the implications of GDPR are extended down to Australia. Certainly, there are instances where we get caught out by that, but largely we focus on the law side. We largely focus on some of the IP arrangements, consumer arrangements around setting up new ventures and moving into finance and that sort of aspect. So I will admit to you and say that the GDPR piece is not super strong, as I say, largely because it's not a super focus for many organisations in Australia right now. But as you say, if that begins to expand and that becomes a bit of a global movement, you know, I think there's some nice discussions to be had around the Europeans' approach to what is an individual's right to own their own data and then sell that. I think that's kind of a very interesting discussion. And the other kind of discussion we'd likely have on our face-to-face intensives with our guest speakers. And we, you know, I know Melinda Edwards in particular is very keen on this whole notion of digital slavery and what is that, and opening organisations up to that notion and how they combat it and how they don't be part of it, etc. So yeah, so the law piece is not to that level. I would argue that piece is probably, you know, you probably see that more in a postgraduate law program. But that's a great suggestion. I'll ask Melinda about it and, you know, consider whether we'll build that into future iterations, basically. So Sandrex asked, cover off quickly between the executive MBA and the online MBA. So the executive MBA has just kicked off. So if you're interested in that, basically you'd be waiting till next January. But that isn't exclusively, well, unless you're in Canberra right enough. So there's two versions. Let me backtrack a bit for clarity. There's two versions. So the executive MBA we run out of Brisbane is a face-to-face program, but an intensive mode. So it's basically you meet every 4 weeks for a 3-day period. And it's a fixed 2-year time slot. So everyone starts and finishes together. It's a bit of a steam train. There's no deviation, locked in. The Canberra model's slightly different in that basically you meet physically every 8 weeks, and in between you have webinars. to connect. So that's the way we run Canberra. But again, it is a 2-year program that starts and finishes as a cohort. And I will say that probably the biggest difference between the Mba, as we call it, and the digital MBA is the experience requirement. We expect 4 to 5+ years of supervisory senior management experience and 10 years plus of work experience for that program. So we tend to get a slightly more experienced cohort for that program than we do for the MBA or the online MBA. So the entry requirements for an MBA and online MBA are exactly the same because we need to make sure we comply with AMBA. But yeah, essentially the big difference, if you like, with the executive MBA and the MBA is the seniority, if you like, for lack of a better term, in the cohort. So some of you may indeed fulfill those requirements, but that's again a one-on-one discussion. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Tim.
No, that's fine. I think that'll be fine.
Cool. So Sandra, if you've got any other specific questions, that's cool. I can handle that. But yeah, look, I think if anyone's all done, we might let you get back to your dinners. But again, if there's more questions, feel free to hang around and Tim and I can answer them. But thanks for being part of this evening. I hope you gave that some clarity around the nature of the program. I do appreciate it. It's still a bit of a snapshot. Yeah, anyone who wants to come back next week and actually do some work, we'll love to see you. As I say, we'll be looking at, I guess, the implication of fintech on the big 4 banks in Australia and using Christensen's theory of disruption to kind of frame that discussion. And then the week after, even though it's not advertised, I'm sort of excited for those people who definitely want to be part of the program. I'm going to run a special session for them around looking at, as I say, the Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, and give you a bit of a sneak preview, if you like, around some of the stuff you'll be doing in that unit. So yeah, thanks heaps. See you next week. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, let us know. Cheers.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Anne. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Oh.
You look miserable, Tim.
It's really hot in this room. Like I'm downstairs, and it's terrible.
Awful, this heat. It really is.
It's really, really bad. I'll send you a message so you can get home.
Yeah, cool. So Shani, Dave, Kirsty, Anne, you guys are all good?
All good. I'm just trying to figure out how to get out of here.
No worries.
Have a good evening anyway. Take care, everyone.
Cool. Well, I'll make it easy. I'll end the session for everyone. Cool.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's gone. Is it on? Oh. Where's the list? Yeah. Tim. Tim and Glenn.